This is just a sample of the training available at itdvds.com. To see complete training, please go to itdvds.com. Let's begin the sample. There are a couple different ways we can troubleshoot dynamic access control. One of the first ways is to go to a folder that a user is trying to access. Normally, a user trying to access a folder, they'll get denied and they'll wonder why. So let's go to Security. Let's go to Advanced. Let's go to Effective Access. This tab is very helpful. So let's select a user. For example, Jim Finch. And then click View Effective Access. This allows us to see where Jim has permissions. If not, there's a red X here, and we see why. So for example, this access is limited by the Desktop Support San Diego Central Access Policy. So I don't have a problem with NTFS permissions anywhere. It's just a problem with the Central Access Policy. So that's where I'd want to go look to figure out why Jim doesn't have access. Now let's look at a different user like Jose. And I'll click on View Effective Access. Okay, we can see Jose is denied, but we have multiple reasons. For example, full control is denied because of the Central Access Policy, but also because of file permissions. These are the NTFS permissions. So here we see exactly why a user is denied. One thing we can do here is actually include a user claim. So if we're trying to troubleshoot, okay, why this user, doesn't qualify for this Central Access Policy, we can say, what about if we made this user's city San Diego, and we made the department Desktop Support. View Effective Access, then that changes things. So if we went into Active Directory, changed these two things, then okay, look, Jose's got all these permissions all of a sudden. Now, still doesn't have these permissions here because the Central Access Policy doesn't grant those permissions. So if we figure out the problem is the NTFS permissions, then we want to go look at the NTFS permissions. If we figure out the problem is the dynamic access control permissions, then we want to go back, go to the Central Access Policy, take a look at whatever rule was listed, and look at these permissions. Make sure that the user will have permissions this way, because if it said they don't, well then they don't. So another thing too, if you've changed group membership of a user, they may need to log off and log back on, because that Kerberos ticket might not have that group membership. Or if you've modified the attributes, you may need to have that user log off and log back on in order for those that Kerberos ticket to have these new attributes and therefore be granted access. Now what about if everything looks right? The user, you've gone and confirmed in Active Directory that the city equals San Diego and the department equals Desktop Support. Well, on the user's computer, I'm just going to go over to a Windows 8 machine. We can open up a command prompt here. Let's go to the Start menu. I'm going to type in CMD, open up a command prompt, type who am I /claims. This will show what claims this user has. So it'll really help us troubleshoot here. We can see department, city, Desktop Support, and San Diego. So this needs to match exactly what we have in our Central Access Policy. And it's the values that need to match. So it's very important. So if we go over to our Central Access Policy, go into Claim Types here, let's open up City. The value here has to match the value that showed up in that who am I /claims. Not the display name. That's generally why we want to keep the value in the display name exactly the same if possible. So if you're convinced that everything is right, it's still not working, you've reviewed everything, another thing you can do is just run Gpupdate. Make sure you don't get any errors here, because if you do, then you could actually have a group policy problem. Because remember, all this is being pushed out by group policy. So your Central Access Policy is pushed out by group policy, your rules, your resource properties, all of that. So if something's going on with group policy, then we need to troubleshoot that. And troubleshooting group policy is a whole nother thing.